Hi, this is another Ask Augustin. Today I'm going to talk more about different bow strokes and also how to transition between them. I think very often we think of different bow strokes as being like separate categories. You're going to play this passage spiccato, this passage is going to be sautillé, this passage is going to be detaché, yeah, that sort of thing. But I actually think it's very important to think of these bow strokes as being kind of on a continuum and being able to transition between them even within a passage. And these transitions can be very useful to practice. For example, practicing getting from this on the string bow stroke to a spiccato. It's generally harder to start getting the bow to jump than the other way around, than to go from a off the string bow stroke to an on the string bow stroke is a little more is a little easier. It's good for wrist spiccato to be the default because it's something that we can keep doing for a very long time without tiring ourselves. But there are definitely also times for involving the arm more. So first of all, whenever it's slower, using the arm gives us much more control over the exact timing and bounce. And there are even some fast passages where I use arm. For example, in the Tchaikovsky concerto, there's this passage where I use the arm quite a bit because I don't want it to sound like this, which is what would happen if I used only the wrist. They would all be grouped in twos. But by using the arm, I can emphasize the triplet rhythm. And but it's not something. It's not a kind of bow stroke that I would want to sustain for the whole piece because it would get very tiring and would lead to tension. So eventually I go back to using more wrist again. By the way, that is an example of where I use a fingering to help my spiccato, because I don't want, in addition to all of this that's going on and the triplets that I want to emphasize, I don't also want to have to deal with string changes. So rather than having that string change in there, I play the whole thing on the E string, which makes it a little bit more tricky, like crawling down and up and back, but it means that my bow stroke can be very sparkly off the string and all in the same color. I got a lot of questions about some other bow strokes, especially upbow staccato is something a lot of people asked me in the comments. A general comment I have is I think you probably want to make sure first that your spiccato and other bow strokes that you use all the time are in good shape before spending a lot of time on staccato, because staccato is quite a specialized thing that you don't really encounter in that much music. Of course, you encounter it in Wieniawski and Paganini, and some occasionally, like Introduction and Rondo Capriccioso has a passage. Occasionally, some pieces, but they're mostly showpieces, and most of the great concertos and sonatas don't have any staccato passages. And in fact, there are some incredibly great violin soloists, famous people, it's really inspiring soloists with great careers who never play anything that has staccato in it, and they're doing just fine. So it's not. I think staccato is a technique like for extra credit, whereas spiccato, it's kind of a tool that you just need in your toolbox as a violinist. You can't really do without. It's totally essential. But here are some tips about staccato. So upbow staccato, I think the most general tip I have is start at the tip and save bow a lot when you first start it. And I find it helpful to breathe in before I start the upbow staccato and breathe out during it, because it helps me with the motion. It helps me not to get tense as I get towards the frog. There are actually several different ways to do it. A lot of people will kind of lock the arm and then do the staccato that way. So it's kind of it's like they tense up the arm and then do it from the arm. This is probably the easiest way to do staccato, but it tends to maybe not have the cleanest, like nicest sound, but that's I think the easiest way to do a staccato. That's actually how I used to do it growing up. Then another way would be to try to do it more from the wrist, which can get a slightly cleaner, lighter sound. So I try to keep my wrist loose and then I give impulses from the fingers. It's actually my fingers doing that, so it tends to be a little bit cleaner. When I have a really long passage, I eventually notice that as I get towards the middle and towards the frog, it becomes harder and harder to keep doing the staccato, and I notice that my bow starts wanting to bounce, and I actually let it bounce a little bit. And if it's a really long passage and I get close to the frog, I might need to play the last few notes by like manually putting the bow on the string for the last few. So in a way, it's actually sometimes 3 bow strokes that are chained together. So I breathe in, and then I try to save a little bow at the start, and then I start jumping a little bit, and the last few I do manually. So this is my solution for staccato. But actually, when you look at different people who play staccato, everybody finds a little bit their own way. I've seen some people who actually don't use all the fingers. They start lifting some fingers off the bow, or like go really on the side. Some people, and some people play with full hair. I don't know. You sort of have to figure out your own way to do this strange bow stroke. As far as down bow staccato goes, that's really just for extra credit. I mean, there's almost no piece that uses it, and unless you're really determined to play or staccato, I don't think you have to learn it. And I have to confess, it's not really something that I would have much advice for. I sort of stay out, try to avoid playing down bow staccato when I can. There are a few cases when I do some down bow strokes. For example, in the Sibelius concerto, there's this. So I usually play a couple, like 5 or 6 down, the rest of them up. But it's actually a kind of thrown bow stroke. I wouldn't really call that staccato. It's more that I kind of throw the bow under the string, and it does actually come from the arm each individually. It's not really what the staccato means. It's kind of more automated. I hope that's helpful, and I'll see you next time.